Hello, good evening. Welcome to Consider This. I'm Melisa Idris, and today on the show I'm joined by Tina Carmillia, a science communicator and journalist, as well as Gurmit Singh, chairman of the Centre for Environment, Technology and Development Malaysia, better known as Cetdem. Welcome, guys, to the show. It's good to have you here.
Thank you.
Today we're going to be looking at the year in terms of Malaysia's progress, or lack thereof, in addressing some of the environmental issues that have come to the fore in 2019. Now, right off the bat, I'm going to start with you, Gurmit. In your assessment of the Malaysian government's progress this year in terms of addressing environmental issues.
I don't think that much has been done. They've been only talking about having laws and doing this, amending the Environmental Quality Act. But in terms of actual enforcement, what matters on the ground, nothing really very much has progressed. Sungai Kim was a sort of disgrace sort of thing, in my opinion.
Right.
But it reflected what has been going on all along, the lack of enforcement.
Well, Sungai Kim was a big issue,
Yeah.
Pasir Gudang as well. Tina, what were some of the biggest environmental issues that struck you this year?
I think the youth activism movement really took off in the past year or so, and I think that there's a lot of discomfort that came out of it, especially with the more traditional status quo type of people. But I think that every now and then a good reminder of this childlike idealism when it comes to such a cynical subject as the climate crisis is important for the older people like us who've been doing it for a while and bogged down by
jaded and
yes,
no longer
exactly.
idealistic. Well, you said discomfort,
Yeah.
that youth activism had actually triggered some discomfort. What did you mean by that?
I think a lot of people prefer to have tangible outcomes with the climate action. You want something that's instant, you want a silver bullet type of answer. And with youth activism, with street protests, it seemed like it's just noise. You don't see a tangible result from it. So you say things like the kids should stay in school. You say things like they're puppets for everything, from Soros to ISIS to Antifa, right? And you can never win. They're not going to win. It's the same with Malala Yousafzai and her education activism. So it's one of those things where it's damn if you do, damn if you don't. So do it anyway.
What did you think about that? I mean,
Well, I thought it was progress at last. The youth was moving a bit.
Okay.
But as Rita pointed out, I'm not too sure whether they're getting very far. But what I'd like to see is a build-up on that they will really translate into actual action. But they also tend to oversimplify because some of them address plastic pollution as part of climate change issues. Then they bring all sorts of issues in and they're talking about climate change.
okay,
So they don't really seem to realize what are the root causes of climate change and what is really preventing action. It's basically government inertia. A lot of vested interests are at stake. There's oil majors are at stake. And there's a whole lot of economics and political forces at stake, because I followed the climate negotiation right before they began, even before the convention was started in 1992.
In Rio.
And I was there in New York when they adopted the convention and Malaysia said we won't join. So I look at it with cynicism, and I think the world has only now beginning to realize a little bit. But it is rather overlate, and I'm pessimistic actually about the whole thing.
Okay, well, you brought up a couple of interesting things. So break it down for us. You said that sometimes in the conversation about climate change, we kind of confuse matters, we lump it all. Then break it down. I mean, what are some of the streams of communication that we should get clear? Climate change, plastic pollution does not come into that, separate issues. So perhaps you can clarify some of the misconceptions that we're having in our everyday conversations about the environment, about climate change. Do you want to start, Gurmit?
Well, basically, I think with the climate change, they should actually look at the root causes. They tend to oversimplify, as I said, the plastic part. And they also oversimplify by saying, oh, if I recycle more, I'm doing something for the environment. I say, recycle what? What are you going to recycle? If you are cutting down your energy use, yes, you are doing something on your use. If you are driving less, you are doing something about it. But doing recycling of plastic or recycling your clothes doesn't produce climate change.
So it
may be distant, very, very remote. but it's not directly related. Then the other myth is about becoming vegetarian. The vegetarians seem to have oversimplified the situation. They claim that you can cut down 60% of the greenhouse gas emissions. There's no way. I've seen all the scientific evidence that in fact 70%, almost 60% is from energy use, and then the rest are from cutting of forests, waste disposal, chemicals and all this sort of thing. So no way can you, by switching to say chicken burgers and meat burgers, actually help really solve the issue.
So, okay, so Tina, what do you think about that? I mean, have we oversimplified the conversations around climate change? You are a science communicator. It's difficult to communicate the life cycle when you talk about products and all that and where it falls into the economy, right?
Absolutely. I mean, it's such a complicated issue, not just because of the science, not just because it's the climate science that's complicated. It's also with the negotiations. It's also the legalese that
right.
you know, that's involved. The square brackets, where you have hundreds of square brackets in the Paris Agreement that needed to.
What's a square bracket?
Square bracket means disagreement.
Yes. So simple words like the parties shall in square brackets, or the parties should in square brackets. And the connotation with shall versus should matters to the parties.
Really?
And that's democracy for you. That's the democratic process
Wow.
behind the climate negotiations. So yes, when we communicate this, when we do climate communication, it's hard to touch on every single element of it, because you cannot do it in a single conversation. You cannot do it in a single program, in a single documentary. It's an ongoing conversation, and there will be elements of it, whether it's plastic. It's so far down the chain, but you can link it back to the oil and gas industry, the petrochemical industry that's produces the raw materials for plastics, for example, and the oil and gases. The industries linked to the climate change or carbon emission.
Okay.
But it's a very long
chain.
Yes,
Yeah,
chain.
it's a long chain.
So, but when it comes to individual action, I know that it seems so unfair.
Yeah.
Right. That the responsibility is passed down to you, especially when you don't know what's going on. No? But it's like doing your taxes. Most of us don't know half of the things that we're doing when we're filing our taxes, but we do it anyway
because we have to.
It's our responsibility.
That's right. Okay, that's a really good analogy to end on. We're going to come back after this quick break and continue our discussion on the year of 2019 in terms of environmental issues. Stay tuned to Consider This. We'll be right back.